In Russia, there are frequent reports of torture. People are beaten and killed in prisons, police stations, and military bases. On July 20, Novaya Gazeta released a video about the torture of an inmate in Yaroslavl Penal Colony No. 1. 12 employees of the Federal Penitentiary Service were then arrested. However, there is no article banning torture in Russia. If such a case does reach court, people are usually charged with Part 3 of Article 286 of the Criminal Code, on abusing official authority with the use of violence. Novaya Gazeta has gathered and analyzed all the available convictions of government officials under this article made from 2011 to 2017. That's 4,427 cases. According to figures from the Department of Justice, 7,116 people have been sentenced under this article in those 7 years. Here's the general picture. Several times more military personnel were sentenced than all other categories put together. The sentences are for hazing. Police officers are in second place in terms of torture. They are sentenced 3 times less. While the most hotly discussed cases in the news are from prisons, Federal Penitentiary Service officials are sentenced 15 times less than those from the Interior Ministry. Novaya Gazeta found only 58 cases in which 65 Federal Prison Service officials were sentenced. How are the jailers themselves tried? Every second Federal Prison Service official convicted receives only a suspended sentence and loses the right to work for the agency for several years. About a third of prison guards go to prison themselves. Novaya Gazeta found only 1 acquittal over these years. Who kills and how? Besides causing physical and moral damage, Novaya Gazeta found 111 cases where the abuse of power with the use of violence led to intentional or unintentional killings, 73 cases, suicides, 18 cases, or suicide attempts, 20 cases. Police officers kill the most. There have been 44 deaths on their watch. The military come in second place, with 17 deaths. The Federal Penitentiary Service comes in third, with 8 deaths. Military personnel drove others to suicide most often, causing 13 deaths, with police causing 4. Employees of the Interior Ministry are responsible for the most suicide attempts of people in their charge, 13 cases. Military personnel were responsible for 6 cases. How much do they pay for torture? Russian law does not specify how much compensation should be paid for moral damage, so every case depends on the will of the judge. As these figures show, in 4 out of 5 cases, the judge lowers the requested compensation by between 2 and 200 times. The largest sum of compensation paid for torture is 1.5 million rubles. The smallest is 1,000. As a whole, half of all compensation payments are no higher than 25,000 rubles. In comparison, the European Court of Human Rights assigns 40 to 45,000 euros compensation to victims of torture. That's between 3 million and 3.5 million rubles, a difference of 140 times. The sentences studied by Novaya Gazeta are far from the real number of crimes in Russia. These are just torture cases acknowledged by the authorities, where perpetrators have been officially found guilty. The real number of victims is much higher. The Committee Against Torture gets 3 times more complaints about Federal Penitentiary Service officials than the number of official sentences. The public data contain no sentences of FSB officials whatsoever. The Committee Against Torture has received at least 18 complaints about them. Not one went to court. It's impossible to even state an approximate number of torture victims in Russia. Many people are simply too afraid to speak openly about what has happened to them.